This is Leo Strauss. I put he's the neocon pope. He is the ideological leader of the faction around Wolfowitz, Feith, Pearl, Luty, Woolsey, and many others, both inside and outside of government, who have been important in recent years. This is the neocon family tree, and there you see a group of neocons down at the bottom. Many of those are in the government, some others are still in the private sector. Leo Strauss is their ideologue. In other words, this is an ideological faction, a very rare thing in American history. They say that they believe in an ideological point of view, and that's what keeps them together. The main influences on Leo Strauss, as I try to show, are Nietzsche, someone who has to be regarded as a precursor of fascism and Nazism, Heidegger, who was a card-carrying Nazi, and Carl Schmitt, also a card-carrying Nazi. Now let's just see a little bit about these people. This is Carl Schmitt. This is another one of the ideological gurus of today's neocons. He was the one who designed the emergency law provisions of the Weimar Republic that allowed Adolf Hitler to take power legally and then use the Reichstag fire to consolidate that power into a dictatorship. So this is somebody who believes in martial law, dictatorship, coups, and the state of emergency as the way to rule. Now, what does Leo Strauss have to say about terrorism? He doesn't talk about terrorism directly, but he talks about it in a kind of a general way. He talks about something called the universal and homogeneous state. The universal and homogeneous state would be what most people would understand as a world of peace, progress, and prosperity. A state where there is no particular war going on and social conflicts are minimized. Leo Strauss wrote, if the universal and homogeneous state is the goal of history, history is tragic. Its completion will reveal that the human problem is insoluble, but there will always be men who will revolt against that universal homogeneous state. When the Good Friday Accords were signed for Ireland, holding out the prospect for peace, when the Palestinians and the Israelis signed the Oslo Accords, the neocons concluded that the possibility of conflict was going out of the world and that they had to do everything possible to make sure that conflict was kept going. Leo Strauss then says, those real men may be forced into a mere negation of the universal and homogeneous state, into a negation that is not enlightened by any positive goal, into a nihilistic negation. Now, nihilism, of course, means you don't believe in anything. In 19th and 20th century Europe, a nihilist is an anarchist bomb thrower, someone who's willing to kill for the sake of killing. And therefore, one possible meaning of the nihilistic negation is terrorism. And what would the nihilist revolution look like? That nihilistic revolution, he writes, may be the only action on behalf of man's humanity, the only great and noble deed that is possible once the universal and homogeneous state has become inevitable. The successful revolt would take us back to the primitive horde. And what's the primitive horde? He means the old Stone Age. He means the cavemen. He means the hunting and gathering and foraging societies. Now this can cover literally anything. War, genocide, mayhem, murder, terrorism. And this is the written form of the belief of the most powerful faction in the United States government at the present time, and the faction that has been most active in the wake of 9/11 and undoubtedly in the preparation of 9/11. Strauss's conclusion, workers and warriors of all countries unite while there is still time to prevent the coming of the realm of freedom. In other words, he doesn't want prosperity and a humane society. He wants a society dominated by war and by bloody political conflicts. This is from his book On Tyranny, 1963. I would only say that the neocons are famous for preaching their true doctrines only verbally and only writing down a kind of watered down version of what they actually believe. So if this is the watered down version, I shudder to think what the verbal version is. One of the current neocons is Samuel Huntington, and it is my contention that the purpose of 9/11 is to unleash the scenario for a world war, which is contained in this book, The Clash of Civilizations, Remaking of the World Order from 1995 approximately. What this says is that the Anglo-American, US-British world domination is challenged by two groups. One are the Arab and Islamic countries. They are a threat because of their high birth rate, not because of ideology, but because they are multiplying too fast from his point of view. The other challenger civilization is China, and China is a threat because of its high economic growth rate. So what Samuel Huntington recommends is that the West, the United States, must organize a coalition to deal with the Islamic world first and with China later on. So this is a perspective for endless war and indeed for the Third World War. I've been asked to say a few words about Al-Qaeda. In my book, I describe Al-Qaeda as the CIA's Arab Legion. The origin of the CIA Arab Legion is the Arab fighters brought in by US and British intelligence, MI6, to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan in the 1980s. In the 1990s, Al-Qaeda had an uncanny ability to attack US adversaries, including Serbia, Libya, and Russia through the Chechen rebellion. The program of Al-Qaeda is to restore the caliphate, that is to say the single Islamic government that was represented by the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, until the end of World War I. And they say that they want to restore the caliphate by destroying every existing Arab and Islamic state. This, of course, means that they can destabilize all of those governments under a radical cover. It's made to order for destabilization. Now, what does bin Laden preach? He says that the duty of a Muslim, in his strange view, is to kill every infidel that they encounter. What does this mean? That there'll be no chance for the Arabs and the Muslims to make deals with Europe, with Russia, with China, India, Japan, Sub-Saharan Africa, or indeed anybody else against the dominant imperialist coalition. So the dominance of Al-Qaeda guarantees that the Arabs and the Muslims will be isolated and defeated. And they also, of course, the question of scientific and technological backwardness that will be enforced by this.